Hello there, math fans. Dr. Andy Lovelace. Going to do a quick review of integrals for my 126 students. This is just about, can you recognize when an integral is in our table? I tell this story of when my kids were little. You'd be driving, and you should look at those integrals that are on the page there and ask yourself, which of them could you do in one step? Several of those you can do in one step. Some of them you can do with other methods, and some of them you can never do. So you might see if you can identify which ones can I do in one step, because that's an important first piece of this. Okay, so I tell the story of when my kids were little. You'd be driving down the road. They were just learning their first few words. You'd point at an animal. You'd say cow. They'd say cow, and you'd be like, my kid's so smart. They know the word cow. Yay. Then you would drive a few blocks later. This would come running in front of you, and they would say cow. That's overgeneralization. So they thought it was the same thing. And when we're doing integrals, we have to think it's only a cow if it looks exactly like a cow, not sort of like a cow. It's got to look identical. Okay, integrals are finicky. You can always check your work by taking the derivative, but if it doesn't look exactly like something we know, then it's not a cow. Okay, so we don't call that a cow. So I talk about that, and to try to emphasize the fact that the only things you can integrate are the things you can hold up directly next to our table of integrals. Here's our basic table of integrals. This isn't a complete list, but it's the practical list. It includes like some slight variations that we see a lot, like when there's a number here or here. So this is a practical list. I would say the vast majority of the time, you're dealing with these, whatever that is, 5. I would say occasionally you do see these other ones. You don't want to forget these. Then every once in a while, some of these other ones pop up. Pretty rare for these to pop up. Okay, so it's not that big of a list, but you do need to know it. And that's part of what you did in your calculus course, was get to know those things well. Okay, so I'm going to put this to the side and kind of quiz you on if you know those. All right, so let's get rid of our list. So we're not going to be able to see if it's a cow. Now, when you're doing an actual problem, you can hold up the list next to it. But here we go. So only additions to that rule are the coefficient and sum rule. So this does not look like a cow, but we can rewrite it in a way that it does. And this is what you spend a lot of your energy doing in your beginning of your calculus course career, is learning how to rewrite things an ugly way so that you can do calculus. So this is a cow, this is a cow, and it's the difference, and there's coefficients. We can do that. We can use our rules. So you can do the antiderivative of this, 1/5 x to the 5th, the antiderivative of this. The power always goes up by 1, and then you flip the number out in front. So this becomes x to the 3/2 with a 2/3 out in front. And this becomes x to the 5th with a 1/5 out in front. And the coefficients just come along for the ride, then you have a plus c. Okay, this one is not a cow. That is not anywhere in our list. It's not anywhere in any list. Not possible. Okay, so that's kind of interesting that such a thing can happen. This is in our list, and this is one of the ones that I add to our list to make our list a little more user-friendly. I always do a double check and take the derivative. This one's not in our list. This is not a cow. This is actually something we call trig sub. Doesn't appear in any of the 126 problems, but we should recognize it's not something we can do in one step. This is also not a cow, but it can be done with something called partial fractions. You factor the denominator, you break up the fraction. That becomes really important in Math 207 and other courses. Trig substitution is very particular to when you're working with very certain integrals. It is valuable for integrating under it. If you want to cut a pancake into thirds in a certain way, I can talk about that. I have a video on it. This right here is arctangent. It is a cow. Now arctangent has this kind of funny form, and I'm I'm running into the real cow in the corner, which is me. You were like, which one was the cow? That guy whose face fills up the whole screen? or or was it the cow below him? Anyways, this is arctangent. This number here is the square root of the 4. You have to know that one's coming. This one's actually the log, but there's a little adjustment for the number that's in front of this. That's in my table as well. That's one people sometimes forget. This one is by parts, so it's not a cow. This one's in our table. This is not in our table. Oh, I was going to put one. I'll throw one more in here. This is trig. We can do a half angle identity. Let's throw 2 more in here just to have it. Something like this. I don't know, x sine of x squared. That's not in our table, but it's a substitution. And what's something else? Something like 1 over x to the 3rd plus 1. That's not in anybody's table. Probably you could do something with it. Okay, so there you go. You need to be able to identify the things we know in one step. It's just a reminder that when you integrate, if it's not in our table, some technique is needed. And all of the techniques are trying to turn it into something in our table. So every problem ends with something in our table. Okay? So first you have to know what's in our table. And that's, I would say in Math 126, the majority of problems are in our table. So you just have to recognize, rewrite, do all the things you normally do. But you need to recognize when it's not, so you need to do more. All right, hope that helps get you started.